Alright, look, I know what you are thinking after seeing the title of this video. I know, it's Fast and Furious. I'm not expecting this series to have the same quality level as the Mission Impossible films. But it's really been no secret that this series has been on a decline in recent years. Ever since the death of the late Paul Walker, may he rest in peace, and this series jumping the shark to the point of no return, this series has truly fallen off. And as someone who really enjoys this series and has even defended it, I want to find out why this series has fallen off. Where did it go right? Where did it go wrong? And everything in between. The series blended together grounded street level action along with family drama. But the biggest theme of this series was family. Yes, I know it's a meme at this rate, but that is the theme of the entire series. Without it, this franchise simply doesn't work. The first film in this series established that one. We follow Brian O'Connor, who is an FBI agent undercover. But he meets Dom and his crew. He finds out a crew of street racers stole some TVs and he thinks it's Dom. But as time goes on, he grows attached to Dom and his crew. He falls in love with Mia Toretto. He gives Dom his keys and gives him a second chance. Let's talk about Brian O'Connor. This character has always been what held this series up. Sure, you could argue Dom, but in reality, he was always a side character. The stories early on were Brian's stories, and it started here. Outside of Brian though, Dom is such an interesting character. He may be a street racer, but he holds a moral code. He treats his team with respect and as family. But besides that, this film plays it very safe. Like I said, it's a dumb fun movie that you can turn your brain off for no reason. But regardless, it set the tone about grounded street racing along with great human drama. While yes, the film is decent, it was good enough for a sequel. The next film is basically a completely different film. Now Dom is on the run, but Brian O'Connor is back. It's here where we meet Roman Pierce and Tej Parker, who will become big parts of this series later on. Tej isn't in this film as often, but Roman plays a big role in helping taking down the villain. Now this is an issue because the villain is very forgettable. This film basically cranked up the comedy and cheesy dialogue. Some of them worked.
I said forget about it, cuz.
But in the end, what you get is another dumb, fun popcorn flick. You're going to hear that a lot. It leans into a spy film, which does become a part of this story, but it's just junk food cinema you forget the moment it's done. After this, we got the most underrated Fast and Furious movie in Tokyo Drift. It was the first to be directed by Justin Lin, who directed multiple Fast films including Fast 5 and F9. It demonstrates a new side of the series that I seriously enjoyed. It's not a perfect film, but it is easily the better of the first three. It's here where we meet Han, whose death would become the most retcon-inducing shit ever. Like the other films, it isn't perfect, it's very flawed, but ultimately it's honestly way more enjoyable than the past two entries. Then when Fast and Furious came out, the series basically rebooted itself. Now Dom is grieving over the loss of Letty and teams up with Brian to bring her killer to justice. The tone is still grounded, but this film also begins to get more fantastical. Like, Dom has force visions, it's kinda weird. But once again, the film continues the themes of the franchise. Family, it carries its way throughout, but also shows how Dom and Brian redeem themselves. The two are at odds but grow closer together. Brian even gets back together with Mia, even meeting Gal Gadot's character Giselle, who tries to get Dom, but he refuses, showing his loyalty towards Letty. Just like the past films, it's not perfect. You can for sure see where this series is going, but either way, it continues what made this series good in the first place. Ending with Brian and Mia breaking Dom out of jail, leading into the next film that changed it all. While the first four films are dumb popcorn flicks, this is the first film I can say is really good. Fast 5 turned the series into something that virtually anyone could get into. The film brings all the past films together to truly make a fun, entertaining watch. They bumped up everything and it worked. Not only were we introduced to Luke Hobbs, who frankly saved this series, but also brought in an element that works so well. They turned this film into a heist film but kept that grounded storytelling. All the past characters are back to pull off the ultimate heist. This is something that always makes this series work so well. It gives you an entertaining story with plenty of grounded street racing, but also a lot of actions around characters you care about. The past films, the main ones, I cared about Dom, Brian, and Mia, but this film brings back characters like Vince, Tej, and Roman. I care 10 times more about them now than I ever did before. Something this film started was the jumping of the shark era of fast movies. Most films that do this kind of ruin the series. For some reason, this was just the complete opposite. Each film got more entertaining as a result. Brian and Dom literally carry a safe with 2 cars. Does it make sense? No, but it's entertaining, so I do not care. Not to mention, this film, for once, had a villain I actually remembered. So when they succeed, their mission is so satisfying because you feel for the characters, you want them to win. Fast 5, without a doubt, is the best Fast and Furious film. After Fast 5, it went in a totally different direction. The series went from grounded street racing to spy espionage. Now, if this was something the previous films didn't do, logically it would make no sense, but given how the past films did it, it's not the end of the world. The jumping of the shark continues here too. Letty is back from the dead. This is an issue I do have, as it kind of ruins the stakes of her death. Don't get it twisted, it leads to some great moments. One of my favorite scenes of this film is when Dom and Letty talk after their race, but the fact she was brought back went a little bit too far. Like, when Dom jumps to save Letty from a bridge that is so far away, it's so ridiculous. But that's what people want to see from these films. Normally, I would try to talk about what makes these stories work, but simply put it, that is not what makes this franchise special. It's the insane action that gets more stupid each time, but it works because of how much you care about the characters. It's kind of like the Mission Impossible franchise. Each film just gets more better in their action as a result. But to talk about the film itself, I do actually think it is pretty solid. I like the approach of the spy thriller. Luke Evans plays a great villain in Owen Shaw. The death of Giselle was heartbreaking but feels pointless now, but we will touch on that later. And the action is once again bumped up. Overall, it's a really enjoyable entry. When the franchise was on top of the world, tragedy hit. Paul Walker got into a car accident. He crashed into 2 trees and a lamppost. This not only broke the world, but also the Fast crew. But the team wanted to pay respects and they already began filming, so they just brought in his brothers Cody and Caleb to do the rest of the film. They brought in James Wan to direct, and it became the first Fast and Furious film to make $1 billion at the box office. But this film is more than just the money made. This film not only sent off Paul Walker perfectly, but its story is easily the best of the series. Not just for Brian, but for Dom too. He and Letty go through a great arc here. They finally learn to love each other again. We even see why his cross means so much to them, as it's the wedding ring he gave to Letty. And when you think Dom is dead, it actually is done really well. But of course he didn't die, but the scene was still really good. It shows how far these characters have come. The villain, Deckard Shaw, is out for revenge. His rivalry with Dom is so great. We also get the next great jumping of the shark moment, where Dom literally breaks a car garage with his feet. But I just don't care, because it's so entertaining. The final scene between Brian and Dom is so great, where we hear the now iconic "See You Again" by Charlie Puth and Wiz Khalifa. But when Dom is narrating in the background, it makes it so much better because Vin Diesel knew Paul Walker. It makes it feel so much more real. In a way, you could view this as the last film of the series. If they wanted to continue, they could, but if they wanted to end it here, it would have been perfect. The series really started off well. It came from nowhere and it was a blast when it started. Going from fun street racing to spy thrillers and having it work is really impressive. But it wasn't gonna last long, which leads us into the downfall. So when it comes to this series' downfall, it isn't as bad as other major film series. It's not as bad as, say, Game of Thrones or the DCEU. I've seen way worse downfalls than this one. But even then, this downfall is nothing good by any means. Franchises running thin isn't a new concept. It happens to every franchise eventually. It's an inevitable part of the process. Whether it's because of the writing getting stale, losing what made the franchise special, or just oversaturating the market, major series have been doing this at some point in time. There are multiple reasons as to why this series started to decline, but the main reason was the absence of Paul Walker. Brian O'Connor is the main character of this series. It started with him as the main character, and he is the heart of it. Dom was never built to run this series. Together, they work, but without Brian O'Connor, it doesn't work as well. Ultimately, that is the main reason for this series falling off. There are of course more reasons which we will discuss, but if you ask me, Fury 7 came out, they should have stopped it there. If you don't have Paul Walker there, why make the damn movie? Oh, that's right, money. Now, I know we are here to talk about the series' downfall, but I do think Fate of the Furious is a decent film. But compared to the last film, it is for sure missing something, and that is Brian O'Connor. The heart we knew is just gone. This film really details that Dom isn't fit to lead this entire franchise. The film also started beef between the actors. Apparently, The Rock and Vin Diesel didn't even film on the same set because they couldn't get along. Now, I do like the idea of Dom turning on his family. The villain, Cypher, holding his son hostage is really interesting. Even kills his mother Elena, who has been in all these films since Fast 5. She was Dom's love interest after Letty and really helped him cope with that loss. Speaking of Cypher, I do think this character is actually pretty interesting. She has solid motives and it was different enough than what we have seen before. When she kills Elena, it was done really well. I also really liked that they made her a recurring villain later on. It's something that was pretty neat. But this film is very flawed. I really don't like how virtually everyone is family now, including Deckard, who, mind you, killed Han in the last movie. So forgiving him is just weird. But also, the character Ramsey from the last film here is just okay, I guess. Also, after a certain point, it really gets annoying seeing Tej and Roman fight over her. However, the one thing that always made this series interesting was the jumping of the shark. And while yes, it's there, it isn't as big as it normally is. The family element is still there, but that entertainment isn't that strong. So yeah, overall, this is a decent film, but compared to the last few, it's very weak. Now, I know we had Hobbs and Shaw before this, but let's be real, who remembers that? But the film that really sent this series downhill was Fast 9. This is the film where the jumping of the shark goes way too far. It's one thing to keep it at a ground level, but they push the elements of fantasy way too far. In this film, they go to space in a Pontiac Fiero with duct tape. All that grounded storytelling is just gone. The verisimilitude is just absent and it takes it way too far. But even outside of that, the story is basically just a copy of Fast 7. This is where you really start to realize this franchise is just out of ideas. We follow an evil billionaire going after a device to take over the world. The stakes are just not there. Roman keeps making a joke about how they're invincible. It's when the audience thinks that we will accept it if the character acknowledges it, but just falls flat and it doesn't fix any of the film's problems. But I think the film's biggest issue is its handling of Han in this film. The way they bring this character back to life is just not satisfying whatsoever. But the retcon because he was some secret agent and takes in this little girl is just dumb. It's one thing to retcon, but it's another to mess it up this bad. Now, this film was directed by Justin Lin again, but if I'm being honest, I think a lot of the blame should go to him. Yes, he makes the action very dynamic, but as a director, it is your duty to set the tone and make it work, and he didn't do that. Vin also deserves a lot of the blame, for sure, but let's not act like Justin didn't direct this. The only real shining light was John Cena's Jacob. Dom having a brother absolutely makes zero sense, but his dynamic with Dom was actually really great. The use of flashbacks was also really good, but the fact it shows how far this franchise has come is really jarring. Honestly, what I hate most about this film is there is so much potential for this film to be a really good movie among all of its slop. It had concepts that could have made for a really entertaining film. The opening scene alone is so well done, but because this franchise has stretched so thin, the story is just bland. Overall, Fast 9 is just a bad movie. Say what you will about the early films and how many issues they had, but at least they were entertaining watches. You can have a fun time watching them. This film has none of that. But that's okay, because the movie made its money back. It made $726 million, and given this film was during the pandemic, that is a major win, so we get to enjoy another installment, one that would hopefully get things back on track. Yeah, that didn't happen. Fast X was the latest Fast and Furious movie, still to this day. While this film also sucks, the best I can say is that it's slightly better than Fast 9. I'm not saying good, I'm just saying it's a tiny bit better. But this film had a troubled production. Justin Lin was once again gonna do this film and even the final film, but literally a few days into filming, he left. So because of that, they had to look for a new filmmaker. And even if you look on like Vin Diesel's Instagram or something, there is a video of him and the director and he just looks so uncomfortable. So I don't blame him for leaving for 1 second. Eventually they landed on Louis Leterrier and this film was back on track. Once the cameras started rolling again, this film cost $340 million. making it not only the most expensive Fast movie, but one of the most expensive films in history. This film was supposed to be the first of a two-part finale, yet it doesn't feel earned. The film ends abruptly with no real payoff. The moment it ends, you're literally wondering what the hell you just watched. It felt like Vin Diesel tried to go for an infinity war for the Fast and Furious franchise, but not understanding why that worked. Not only is this film a pile of garbage, but like I said, the payoff isn't there. This is natural for a two-parter, but it just doesn't feel like anything was earned at all. Now, one thing this film did get right was its villain, Dante Reyes, played by Jason Momoa, who is clearly having a blast playing this character. His character makes zero sense, but you know what? This film doesn't make sense in general, so like, whatever, just whatever. It's a retcon-inducing thing, but it was just funny, so whatever. And it was probably the only entertaining part of this film, if it had any entertainment to begin with. At this point, Dom is just Universal's Batman given his strength. The dude literally grabs a car door and uses it to save someone. How? Just how is this a thing? I guess the Fast franchise is the MCU now. Not to mention, they decided to bring back Giselle for literally no reason. She will probably serve a plot in the next film, but I despise bringing her back, and her death now means absolutely nothing. But this film is just another entry that is just out of ideas. Its jumping the shark moments also just go too far into parody. But most importantly, it fails to fix what Fast 9 did. The downfall of this series ultimately is drawn to three major things. Brian O'Connor is missing, going too far in jumping the shark, and running out of ideas, leading to the series having to decline. It's not as bad as other series, but it's not anything good either. Now, of course, I cannot finish this video without talking about Vin Diesel. Because of his ego, it is one of the biggest reasons as to why this film series had its downfall. He went from being a side character to forcing himself into the series, trying so hard to be the lead and failing. But it's not just that. Vin Diesel has an insane ego. Like I said, he made the director of Fast X leave and has beef with The Rock. Yes, it's clear The Rock has a big ego too, but it's Vin's even worse. But just outside of that, Dom is not a strong enough character to lead the franchise. When Paul Walker died, it was ultimately when this series ended, because it's an undeniable fact that Brian O'Connor is this franchise. Therefore, Paul Walker is this franchise. This is objectively true. This series was built around his character from the beginning, and that is why it works so well. Now, don't get it twisted, I'm not sitting here saying Dominic Toretto is a bad character. That's just not true. But the reason why he just doesn't work is because of where he started. He always started as a side character, not the main character. You really see why Brian O'Connor is the heart in the first film. Then when Fate of the Furies comes, you can just tell Vin isn't strong enough to carry this franchise on his back. This series was built around a story of an undercover cop, not a street racing criminal. Dom is not the lead, and he never will be. That is the problem. If Dom can't hold this franchise up without Paul Walker, this series cannot work. Which is also why I scoff at Vin's comments when he says they're going to bring back Paul Walker, because of course they are. They're going to do it. It's Hollywood. Now, we are so desperate. We are going to bring back the dead. Are you kidding me? Bringing in Kobe and Caleb to do the motion capture for Fury 7 worked for a specific reason. It was meant to be a farewell. And while going back to the street level racing is a good thing, bringing back Paul Walker is not a good thing. Yes, I've made it clear, Paul Walker is this series. But if you have to force him out of the dead to just make a quick buck, you are still in an empty scenario. Without the real Paul Walker, what's the point? You're just milking this series without shame at that point. So to say this series had a problem since Vin Diesel's ego took over would be a massive understatement. Overall, the Fast and Furious downfall was a quick downfall. It had a good streak in the early days, but after the death of Paul Walker, going too far and jumping the shark, the entertaining story went away, forcing Dom to be the lead, all went to the downfall of the series. It's not even close to as bad as other series, but it's still a sad one given just how much fun this series once was. But now, the question is for you guys. What did you guys think of the Fast and Furious franchise? Do you think its downfall is as bad as people make it out to be? Do you think it's not as bad as I'm saying? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. But until next time, take care.